Hey guys, it's Jacoya of Jacoya Gems. Thank you so much for once again coming back to view my channel. If you have not already done so, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, like this video, comment, as well as share it to your social media platforms. So we are back with another episode from my blog, Survivor Scribe, where we come in to interview various people about their childhood, the demographic that they've grown up in, their religious background, if they are still a part of it, some trauma that they've experienced, some highs and lows, up and down, as well as how they have coped all the way up until now. During these interviews, we also allow them to feature any businesses or ministries that they have going on. So, tonight, with a second addition to forced marriages in the Black church, we definitely have a sister of the scribe back with us tonight. My sister Ebony Kelley is here. Hey sis,
Hey,
how are you tonight?
I'm wonderful and yourself.
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. So, for the people who do not know who you are, go ahead and give us an introduction, sis. Let them know who you are, any businesses you have. Also, guys, you can donate to the platform as well as to Ebony on tonight. It is scrolling across the screen. Go ahead, sis. Take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ebony Kelley. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Currently residing in Chicago, Illinois for the last past 9 years. I am a divorced mother of 5 children, 2 grandchildren. Right now, I am a CNA, been a CNA for the last past 23 years of my life. I'm currently opening a home healthcare business called All in Our Hands that will be up and operating real soon. Um, yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much for that, sis, and thank you for coming back again. For those of
No,
you who do not know, when I post this, I will also share in the description Ebony's interview for before. We had amazing reviews on that interview.
oh
So thank you,
wow,
Ebony. Yeah.
that's amazing.
So on tonight, guys, as I stated, we're going to talk about forced marriages in the Black church. Last week we were supposed to do a panel, but due to technical difficulties I ended up talking to Cashmere alone, but that end up things happen for a reason, and maybe it's important that they heard the male side and then we'll hear the female
Okay.
side and then bring things together, because both of you guys had different experiences being on in different areas of the church, and so I'll
Okay.
also link that video down below. So, Ebony, just walk us through of how you met your ex-husband, exactly how it is that you guys came into the church, and how leadership reacted to the relationship.
Okay. Well, I met my husband actually in church. I was going to my mom's church when I first moved down here, and one Sunday I saw him. Then the next Sunday he presented me with his number because he did locks, and he seen that I had locks. So that's how we met. Um, we dated for about 2 years. I wound up getting pregnant after a year, and so we had stopped going to my mom's church, but we both still wanted to go to church and have our children in church. So we found the church that was up the street from our house, and excuse me. So that's the church we had started going to. It was a pretty good church, very family oriented, friendly, everything. Um, and we that's the church me, him, and our children get baptized in. Um,
Mhm.
so it was like I found out I was pregnant while we was going to the church, and then so the pastor, I'm not gonna say he was a very good pastor. I loved his teaching. But then it was like, okay, what you guys are going to do, as far as marriage, he wanted us to get married before our son was born, but we wanted to have a wedding.
Mhm.
So I felt as if he was going to give us counseling, but that didn't happen. It was so that didn't happen. So fast forward, I had my son like 2 weeks early, and one day he came home and he was just like, "Well, the pastor called me today. He said we're getting married on this Sunday after church," and that's how it happened.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. Now, the church that I grew up in, they wouldn't, girl, y'all wouldn't have been together for 2 years without getting married. I'm gonna tell you that.
Well, we wasn't in the church.
Doing,
Yeah, we was in the church for a short period of time
uh-huh.
before we got married. I think we started going to that church in the summertime, if I'm not mistaken. I had my son in January, so we was at the church probably about 6 months.
That's typical.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna tell you from experience, even if you wouldn't have gotten pregnant, they likely would have possibly pushed y'all to, why aren't you engaged yet? Why aren't you, married yet? It's better to marry than to burn. How did that make you feel? Well, first of all, did you feel inclined or obligated to get pregnant because you were married? And whether that be yes or no, did you feel the extra pressure from the church?
You mean did I feel inclined to get pregnant because I was or
No, no. Did you
married
feel
because I was
inclined to get?
pregnant?
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I wasn't even thinking about marriage. I mean, we talked about it. Well, I'm not gonna lie. I believe we was already engaged
Mm-hmm.
because he did propose to me. I did have a ring, but no, we wasn't married because we was trying to plan a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
At the time that we started going to the church, we was already engaged. When we started
Okay.
going, by the time we started going to church, yeah, we was engaged. But the pastor did ask us about that. Him and his wife. Well, he spoke to my husband. His wife spoke to me, and we both told both of them not like we don't want to rush into marriage. This is something that we want. We want to have a wedding. I wanted to have a wedding. I didn't want to just have an after service ceremony. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was like, okay, it went hush for a while. Nothing else was said about it until after I had our son. And then it was like, okay, y'all need to get married. You getting married on this day after service. I'm like, huh? To me, I felt like I was pushed into it. I was forced into it because I felt that the pastor should have gave us marriage counseling or couples counseling or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like made sure that we was ready for it because obviously we wasn't ready for it. You know, I just felt rushed into it. We both felt rushed into it. At the time.
That's something that is commonly discussed and expressed, that a lot of people, specifically people around our age group, I want to say especially like between 30 and 40, maybe 33 to 45, who grew up in the same type of church environment, because the church has changed. I may even want to say 35 and older, honestly. Um, where a lot of times the sanctity in marriage is supposed to be sanctified. So I'm not
Right.
being sacrilegious when I say that I'm doing this because of the way that the church describes the sanctity of marriage versus how they actually carry it out. It doesn't line up. And if the sanctity of marriage is truly being honored, then at some point we will actually be taught about biblical courtship. That's something totally different, but the holistic approach would be taken. How did it make you feel not to even be offered counseling before marriage?
Well, like I said, it made me feel forced and pushed into marriage. I felt
Mhm.
uncomfortable about it. And I even expressed to my ex husband, like, well, do you think we should do it? I feel like we should get some marriage counseling first. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
because we have been going through a whole lot prior to us getting married. So
Mhm.
I felt as if we needed some, and neither one of us knew anything about marriage, even though his parents were still married at the time. And, you know, my parents was divorced, but my mom was remarried. I felt like someone should have took us in as two young people that don't know what they doing, don't know what they getting into, to sit down and talk to us, to let us know, well, this is what it should be. This is how it should be. Because as I was coming up in the church, I never knew nothing about courting until I started studying Hebrew. So no one in the churches never told us about it. Parents never talked to us about it. So it was like I felt it was overwhelming, and it was like, wow, like a Mack truck just hit me, and it was like, oh wow, so this is what I have to do. Basically, I felt like I was being told I didn't have a choice. This is something that you have to do. This is what it's going to be. This is what it is. So I didn't. It didn't sit right with me. It didn't sit right with him either. But he was a little bit more excited about it than I was. I really didn't want to do it, to be honest. I really didn't want. I was just so against it because, like I said, at the time we was going through so much. I just felt like we needed someone to sit down and talk to us because no one really knew what we was going through. His parents had a little vision of it, but no one knew what we was actually going through. And I feel like if someone would have sat down and talked to us, we wouldn't have had got married. I
See,
think if the pastor would have sat down and talked to us, he wouldn't have married us. So yeah.
it's a lot that's layered in what you said. Unfortunately, the black church drops the ball when it comes to teaching on courting because that's part of our heritage that we have lost and gotten away from. I mean, you know that by both of our belief systems changing to the Hebraic way. Now, what I will say is the way that my father taught us closely lines up to how Hebraic courtship is supposed to work. Me and my sisters just didn't listen. For him, he always felt like before you call yourself even liking a little boy, if you think you even have a little interest in him, he needs to come and talk to me, come see me, have a conversation with me. Then I'll decide if you're going to continue this. Like my daddy had things, we just didn't listen. So that was how it was supposed to be. Now, has that always been reflected the way that we came up in church in the black church? Absolutely not, because majority of people, that was just a father standpoint. That wasn't a pastoring standpoint. Because a lot of times we will keep people from the church and from our pastors until we're already in love, till we already engaged, till we're already having sex, because you feel pressure
Well,
to get married.
my dad didn't even teach us that. I guess because I had a boyfriend when I was 12, 13, and he was spending nights at my house. So we wasn't sleeping together, but he was at my house. My parents really didn't teach us that. Like, to be honest, I didn't learn any of what I'm going through now about, or know now about marriage and courting and waiting and all, until I got grown. You know, to be honest, I wasn't taught. I didn't hear it in the church. I didn't hear it in the home. So I just went off my natural instinct until I got older, and I was like TV shows and movies and stuff like that, like marriage counseling. And I'm like, oh, okay. So when it was time for me, I wanted that.
Hmm.
I wanted someone to talk to me to see what was I at, and if I was woman enough and ready to have a husband. If my mindset is there on being married. I was like 35, I believe, when I got married, or 32, one or the other, but I wasn't ready to be a wife. because I didn't know how to treat a husband. I didn't know how to talk to my husband. I didn't know how to carry my household as a woman, as a wife. You know, I just knew I knew how to be a mother, but I didn't know how to be a wife.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't brought up in the churches when I was coming up. It wasn't talked about in home or anything like that. So it was like I was blind to the real world of relationships and marriages. I was blind to it because, hey, I just thought, okay, people get married, people have kids, and then they get married, okay, or they have kids first, however it go. I didn't get the understanding, or I didn't have the knowledge to the background of marriage or even courting with someone. Like I said, I didn't even never heard Courtney until I got in my 30s. So it was like everything was new to me, and some things is I'm just now learning over the past 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, yeah,
But that's a common thing, and it's something that I believe um, is grossly overlooked. It's the fact that a lot of Black women didn't grow up with fathers, or if they did grow up with fathers, they didn't grow up with fathers that were husbands, or if they were husbands, some of them weren't good
good
husbands
husbands. Mhm.
at all.
Yeah,
Just because you have a two-parent household does not mean that you have a solid and sure foundation. A lot of times that means you have twice the toxicity, because you're not only dealing with one parent, you're dealing with two, and then you're dealing with the dynamic of their relationship, how it affects your relationship, as well as how you view relationships. So unfortunately, a lot of little Black girls were taught you ain't supposed to have sex, but it was never said don't have sex until you're married, because baby spirits are attached to that. Don't have sex before you're married, because your body is actually worth something, and a man is supposed to pay your father to take possession of you. A man is supposed to give you a dowry for what it is that you possess, because you are more precious than rubies. Nobody really sat down consistently to feed us certain things. And so when you do what's natural to you, unfortunately, inordinate affection is natural to a lot of Black girls first, because of how we've been sexualized, we've been raped and molested and all of these other things. And so when you're not taught how to court, and when you're not taught how to preserve yourself, and when you're not being protected by those around you, when you get a hold to somebody and you start sleeping with them, and you have no guidance, or even if you don't engage sexually, you have no guidance, and you just know I love this person and I want to be with them, it's easily to come into a spiritual dynamic and to be controlled and manipulated by leadership, to be forced into something. Because regardless of how good the intentions are, my daddy always say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's a lot of times I've seen people want to have members married just so that they can say that they're a church full of husbands and wives.
that's what I felt. To be honest, I
Okay.
felt like my pastor had a deadline every year to have certain things did, because that following year he tried to do the same thing to another couple, young couple. And it was like, and I started looking at him like, hold on now. And it was after I seen the Native American people come and give him the check and all this, and I'm like, hmm, is this something that he have to? Do we have to have so many marriages at the end of the year, and or so many baptisms at the end of the year? Like, what is going on in this church? Like, I felt like that. I felt like he pushed us into marriage and tried to push them other because he have to meet a guideline.
Mhm.
And it was mind bothering. It became mind bothering, like, because we was fresh and new to the church, so it was like, okay, we did some events and all that, but it was like I just I just felt like it was just pushed on me. And then when I seen him doing it to other people, I felt like it was pushed on him, something that it was pressure for him because it's something that he had to do from an
Mm.
overseer over him. You know, that's how I started feeling about the church. So, to be honest, it made me leave the church.
Well, you know, there
Man.
are some sinister things that are at play in churches that we're aware of. And I know when people watch this on the playback or whatever, they're like, well, maybe he just didn't want sin in the church. And, you know, because that's what a lot of them say. I don't want nobody in the church committing fornication. People don't have sex anyway. And what we are taught about what fornication is, see, I'm going to do a video and I'm going to teach on the truth about fornication and the Roman Catholic doctrine that has co opted our people versus what biblical fornication is, biblical marriage is, and biblical cohabitation. Because
Oh, I can't wait for that.
listen, because it's a lot of things. The Most High never was for whoredom. But what we call whoredom today, it's just it's a lot of stuff. Because if you're engaged, you're betrothed, you're already that man's possession. The only thing that
Mm,
needs to happen is the witnesses or the marriage contract to be signed. Like it's a lot of things that goes into play. A lot of things that the church calls sin that isn't sin. That there's no law against. That there's instruction for, and it's just elders are needed. And I believe that there is a lack of balance when it comes to marriage in the black church, because sometimes you have pastors who won't say anything, who won't give any advice, who don't care if you get married, who watch people have sex and just run through their congregation. It's well known in Chicago that the gentleman who I got pregnant by the last time, well known bass player, him and his family are whores in the entire organization. And there
oh,
are a lot of men like him, but they're allowed to do these things. They never get set down. They still get booked to preach. They still get booked to teach. They still get everything, and they are able to hop from woman to woman. So a lot of times these pastors will push marriage so that that stench will not be on their church. But what you are talking about, since that sound like some West African water spirit, I'm sacrificing you to this deity and making your marriage. Listen, you know, you know the stuff.
right. Because I mean, like I said, like my thing is okay. If that's what you believe in, if you don't want people pouring around your church, I feel I can understand that because I can't say I watch my sister who's back in Detroit. Her pastor Sunday, I watched him on Facebook. He like stripped a lot of deacons
Mm-hmm.
from being a deacon due to the fact of how they was taking their authority and using it on women in the church. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, "No, I don't play that in my church."
Mm-hmm.
And like my sister after church, he also sat down with the ladies about they dress attire coming into the church. To me, that's a church, a
Mm-hmm.
foundation.
Mm-hmm.
My pastor, well, the pastor, he didn't do that. I mean, you was letting women coming up in wearing whatever the heck they want to wear. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what was going on in church because I stayed a lot to myself and my family. I spoke with a lot of older women, elderly women in the church, so I ain't never congregate with young women in the church or anything like that. But how can you force people to get married if you don't know the extent of their relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Because one person can be a Christian, church going, the other person can be the damn devil itself, one of his children, bringing your Christian person down. So why would you want to put that together? That's how I
Mm-hmm.
feel, and that's what I was in. I was one way, my husband was the other way, and he was bringing me down. So that's why I say if our pastor would have gave us counseling, he would have known like this is something that y'all don't need to be getting into.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, they have answers for that too. They will use the Apostle Paul because Paul talked about that when one spouse is holy or keeping the laws and the other one isn't into it, that the that spouse now is sanctified, and so is the whole house. That's why a lot of times when black women find themselves in marriages and they wake up to the truth, or they start going to church and they try to force their husband to, you really can't do anything about it because you married him unholy. But this is why courtship is important. This is why the elders, that's what I wanted to say, the elders being present is very important, but some elders that are present for nefarious intentions. You have people who church can be very political. You have people sometimes who want people married to certain people just so certain churches can stay in the family. Oh, if he marries so and so, then he'll overtake this church. Like sometimes it's political, sometimes
Right.
it's spiritual, because there's also spirits that's wielding things that happen. But the fact that you guys didn't have marriage counseling, it brings me to the side of where's the protection for the black woman in her relationship and in marriage in the black church. Because if you are not sitting down, and a man too, but we're talking from a woman's standpoint tonight. If you are not sitting down as a pastor who is supposed to be the spiritual covering for a woman, um, and you're not vetting, then you can possibly hand her off to the wolf. So how did it feel, sis, to be under spiritual headship or authority of a man and just hand it over like that? Well, you guys were already engaged, but so when I say hand it over like that, I mean as far as this is what you need to do because you knew what hands you were in. But at some point, it should be some type of safety check to make sure those hands are capable.
Right. Well, like I said, after a while, I felt like it was something that my pastor had to do. It was like a quarter he had to meet. That's how I felt because after we got married, um, it was just like it still wasn't no how's the marriage going or let me talk to you guys. It was just like okay, I married them. That's it. On to the next one. So to me, I don't know how I felt. I know I just felt like it wasn't right. I felt like it wasn't right. Everything was done totally wrong. Even his father felt some my father-in-law felt some type of way about it. You
Mm.
know, he was like, "What? Y'all getting married next Sunday?" And we like, "Yeah." He was like, "And who told you?" And like he was even shocked like, "Who does that?" You know? So I did feel some type of way, but I can't explain how I felt, but it was an unease feeling because like I said, I feel like if he would have took the time and gave us marriage counseling and counseled us into a marriage, my marriage probably would have lasted because he would have seen that my husband wasn't ready and maybe he would have gave him a little more counseling, you know, because like I said, 6 months after we got married, I'm in church by myself with tears in my eyes, you know, crying. I can't even, and my pastor watching me, like, and his wife approached me, and I just broke down. It was like, my husband having an affair on me. He got the woman in my house. This is what you signed me up for. You signed me to this man. You know what I'm saying? But now you still don't have nothing to say. So it was like, wow, like, and you supposed to be the overseer over us. You know, you're supposed to be our pastor. Like, and I can't even come to you and I don't know if his wife said something to him about it because there wasn't no phone calls that was made to one of us, neither one of us. After I spoke to his wife in church, no one never reached out back to me, asked me how I was doing. It was just like we did our part. Y'all gotta take care of the rest.
No, this is not the first time I've heard this, and that's sad because I've talked to women who have said the same exact thing to you. Like they'll press you to get married and push you into it. But if they know your husband is having an affair, they'll hide it from you. you find out, and then they say it ain't none of my business, or you'll go and confide, and they
Mhm.
offer no counseling, they offer no solution, they offer no sound advice. So it does feel like you just sanction this to be able to say that you married someone and you signed
Exactly.
over a covenant. Because then where's the discernment of the leaders?
Exactly.
Like, where's all of that prophesying and everything else when all of that is happening? And not having the words just based off of things that we talked about via our last interview with some of the cyclings and relationship experiences that you've already had with other men. It just sounds like it's just another cycle of, I trusted you as my pastor and you pushed me into this,
Exactly.
and now that I'm in this, you
But
have.
it's not even though it was like my pastor. It was like even his wife, because I had a good rapport with his wife before then,
Okay.
and not just
I
her.
want to hit on
With
that.
elderly ladies in the church, like I said, I talked to these ladies. Called me. They came and picked us up from church. Sometimes they showered us with Christmas gifts. They did all that. But when I walked into that church and I sat in that pew and I cried my heart out, and after church and they came and they like, Sister Ebony, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Where's Mr. Corey? And I told them, it was like, okay, girl, handle your business. Like, wow.
Hmm.
I had to go to my mama and his mama to get any kind of counseling, talk, or somebody just to talk to me to guide me through it. You know what I'm saying? Because it was that, and that's like I said, that's what pushed me away from the church. Cause it was like y'all not really here for your congregation. Like here I am, a young lady that came into your church. My whole family, I mean, me, him, my kids, his kids, we all got baptized at this church. Y'all Christian our son at this church. But here I am, a woman that you married, your wife, me and her called, we called each other on the phone and everything. When I told her he was cheating and what he was doing, like I said, I never got no phone call, no counseling, no sus. I'm just reaching out to you to make sure you're okay. You know what I'm saying? Why don't you and Brother Moore come in and let me talk to y'all? It was nothing. It was like just a cold shoulder. And that's how I felt. I felt cold. Like, wow, this is like really happening. Like, I gave up. And that was one of the things that made me give up on church. One of them. Like, they really, it's not. And that's why I'm so, I have like a church for me to step into it has to be, I have to like really study the pastor, the congregation, everything of because of the experience that I had in that particular church. It really made me turn away from church because it's like y'all not in it really for us, even though we are the same color. Y'all not in it for us. That's
Hmm.
why I got to thinking like, is these Native American people, are they running these churches? You know, that's how I started feeling like, oh, they running these churches. They don't really care. They just trying to meet their quota for these people so they can be sanctified and glorified and get big and get them big checks. They don't care about their congregation. And that's how it made me feel like they don't care.
See, I'm gonna have to look into that Native American connection, because what did not was y'all Baptist?
It was a Baptist church, yeah.
Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah, because I was Apostolic Pentecostal. When you said that, I just automatically, I'm like, that sounds like some Baptist connections for some reason.
Yeah. It was a Baptist church.
But even with the first lady, specifically her, because you are a woman, and that was the time for her to step in to counsel you and him to come in and correct him. My mom was the first lady for over 20 years before she passed away in November. And I know for a fact, like, she would never talk to me about stuff but she believed in counseling her members and
Hmm.
making sure, like, It was women that came to our church who mothers were still alive, but my mother mothered them, helped remother them because of their mother wounds and different things like that. And when it comes to being a wife, like she's a wife, so I'm sure like you had the right to have some type of expectation because they placed themselves in a leadership position.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so what are your views on courtship now? And now that you have different views, what would your expectations be when it comes to entering into something?
Well, now I'm courting real well. Because before I make any move with a man, I at least have to date you to see what type of person, what kind of spirit you have, at least for about a year. You know,
Mm,
I'm very particular on the type of people that I talk to, the type of people that I let in my circle. Because right now, there's no one in my inner circle but just me and my kids. You know,
mm-hmm.
I'm real particular about who I bring around my kids because if you cannot treat me right, yourself right, then I know you can't treat my kids right. So I would tell anyone, please, before you think about marriage, get some counseling, or at least know that person. You know, because I knew what kind of person he was. I knew he was an alcoholic. I knew he was verbally abusive. You know, so it was like I feel like if I would have known about Courtney then, me and him would have never even had a child together because he wasn't material for that. And now I know it's like, okay, take your time, get to know somebody, get to know they full background of them, they ins and outs, they highs and lows, they uglies, they pretties, they sads, they happies. It's like you have to know all that about a person because a person can show you one thing, but once you commit to them, they show you something totally different. And it's like it would hit you, it will hurt you, it would damage you, and it will put a mark on you. So yeah, I take my time to get to know men now before I just jump into anything with them because back then I used to be type person like, oh, you seem cool, you know what I'm saying? We had a few conversations, you know, 'cause that's how me and my husband was. You know, he seemed cool. We went out a couple of times, you know what I'm saying? Before we even laid up with each other, we went out a couple of times and everything. You know, he took me out for my birthday. I met his parents. He met my mom because we was going to the same church. But I never knew that I was dating a demon. God forgive me for calling him that. Somebody with a demon spirit that had a demon spirit on him, should I say. I never knew that. But if I would have knew about Courtney, I think I would have took more time to get to know him because I'm gonna tell the story like one day me and him went out after we went out for my birthday and we had such a lovely time. I was just so impressed. I went to his parents and I was like, thank you. And they was like, what are you thanking us for? I'm like, for having Corey. He's such a gentleman. His parents looked at me like, is he talking about the same Corey? You know what I'm saying? For real. Like they really but later on down the line, I found out why. Even if his parents would have just sat down and talked to me.
Thank you.
You know, but they talked to me afterwards.
Afterward.
Right. And like I said, the day we got married, I didn't want to marry him because what we went through that night, his mom and him kind of like talked me into marrying him. You know your son ain't no good. You know how your son did his first baby mama. So why would you push me into marrying this man after I just walked in your house with my 3 kids, well, my 4 kids, my newborn 2-month-old son, my 4 kids, and his 2 kids crying. Well, I don't know if his other son was with us or not. I had all these kids, police dropping us off, and you still begging me to marry this boy. So I think now you can't even trust parents nowadays.
Oh no.
Because
No.
your parents, the parents be like, oh yeah, well, mm-hmm. Nah, Like when my oldest son bring girls, I be like, girl, do you know how my son is? You sure you want to date him? Okay, now. So you just saying his attitude, right? I forewarned them. No one never forewarned me. So now I know, Ebony, pay attention. Pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to everything about this person. So you have to. I say at least date a person for 2 years just to see if you can withstand they bad just as well as they good. Because he showed me a lot of good. He showed me more bad. And if I would have knew about Courtney then, like I said, we wouldn't have never got married. We would have never had a child. He probably would have been long gone far off my mind. For real. Because I would have been walked away. Because I would have seen, like, okay, this is who you are. So this is what you're going to bring to me as a husband. And this is what you're going to bring to my children as a stepfather.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't nothing nice for my children or myself, nor his children. Because they was victims as well. So take your time and get to know somebody. And if you want to get married, get some counseling. Even if it's not a pastor or a pastor wife, find a counselor. Get some counseling because it's very important. It really is. It is very important because that lets you know that person all the way. And then pray on them and ask the Most High to reveal the true them to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you obviously need to pray and have some elders present. And unfortunately, a lot of times parents will co-sign marriage or push marriage and talking to marriage. I've been saying for a while, but that's actually something that I'm going to address in some YouTube videos coming up. So, sis, thank you for coming tonight and sharing with us your story on forced marriages in the Black church. Unfortunately, this is a conversation that I've been having for years behind the scenes, whether it's a marriage or an engagement. These things are very, very popular, and it's something that needs to be talked about because I believe if the Black church taught courting from a Hebraic standpoint, and if these men and these women had to be vetted by the elders and the families had to know each other first, we would see a lot less children out of wedlock. The divorce rate will basically deplenish because things will go back to a holistic standpoint. But until we get back there, we have to know how to identify red flags, how to heal ourselves so that we can become better and stop attracting people that's attracted to the trash in us. Because I honestly believe that when we end up in certain situations, self first and self especially, it's because there's something about us that's broken that we need to be able to heal from.
That's
And if the
that's
Black
true.
church teaches on proper healing from childhood trauma, on what we think marriage is and what we think relationships is and how things are, what we think things are supposed to be, we will grow overall. So with that being said, you guys, you can do me a favor, like this video, comment on it, subscribe to my YouTube page, as well as turn on the post notifications. Feel free to support the platform. My Cash App and PayPal is scrolling across the screen, as well as Ebony's, and all of this will be linked down below in the description. Just thank you so much for coming back again on tonight. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Have
Okay,
a good
signing off, guys. This is Jacoya with Jacoya Gems. Bye.
bye.